walking in with this radio.
Yeah.
And you set the tone right from the start. So this radio, this looks exactly like a radio.
From the 70s.
From the
yes.
70s, right?
Yeah.
And so it is 25 pounds. It
25
feels like
pounds.
it's more than that,
yeah.
but I might just be weak. But it's got the knobs on the top and everything. And so you would, obviously have this in the car to go with the scales and everything.
Allegedly.
Where did this come from?
Obviously made in the shop. So the days in the 70s, they did not weigh the cars after the race. All you had to do was get
crazy.
over the scale before the race. And same with ride height, same with about everything. Once you took the checkered flag, you drove your truck on the hauler, and occasionally, late in the 70s, they started tearing down an engine, but that was all they would do.
Yeah. And so do you know what car this came, what shop this was in, what car this might have been in?
Yeah, I know pretty well.
Do you want to let me know? Was it where you worked?
Allegedly, it came out of a shop where I worked. Yes, sir.
From the 70s.
I've been moving it around since the 70s.
And you hung on to this.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of it. Yeah.
Did you make this?
Let's say some people I know and I came together, and that was the result.
Man, a lot of people have come on our show, and we talk about innovation. I call it innovation.
Yeah.
And I've drove some cars with some innovation. And we've told a lot of great stories on this show. One of my favorites was Darrell Waltrip, Dick Beatty walking Darrell Waltrip. It might have been before Dick Beatty, but one of the head technical directors walking Darrell out onto the track and saying, "Darrell, look at all this lead shot. Wonder where this is coming from."
In those days, in the 70s, in NASCAR racing, officiating was not much.
Yeah.
And if you raced in the 70s with a 100% rule book legal race car, you didn't race for long because you would be out of business.
Yeah.
So I came NASCAR racing in 76. Darrell Waltrip was the driver. Darrell was a hell of a driver. I mean, great guy.
Yeah.
But when we ran full weight, full height, full everything, we didn't run very well. Right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look around and see one guy's front of his car scraping on the ground, and ours is up to the 4-inch rule.
Yeah.
So to me, my efforts were, number one, we got to stay in business. We had a sponsor and owners, and we had to win. The pressure's always on in this business to perform. So we had to come up with ways to be competitive against other cars. And so we ended up with finding ways to get over the scales, because once you got over the scale, it was whatever you could do, right?
Yeah.
And so buckshot came. It was my idea. I found a way. There was one race car we had. We called it Bertha. Robert G., your grandfather, did all the bodywork on it. And that was one of the most successful cars to race in those days.
Yes.
So Darrell, he was the driver. Buddy Parrott was the crew chief, and I was the chief mechanic, or car. I think they call it car chief now.
Yeah.
Came in one night, didn't tell anybody. Found a way to. First went to the gun shop and bought a bunch of bags of buckshot. Found a way to take the battery sat on top of the frame rail. You could take the battery out, drill a hole in the frame, pour 50 pounds of buckshot in, and then the jack, where the jack post was, it was just a little short piece of tubing that during pit stops you would jack the car up under. Cut that out inside that tubing, so now there's a hole up into the frame. Put a little plug there, ran a bolt up, and it kept it tight for all the practice, and just for the race, loosen it, and had counted the threads of the bolt, and you turn it 3 turns and the plug will fall out. But I really believe we were just keeping even with people doing other things. Maybe they were doing buckshot as well. I don't know. But
so how would the bolt eventually come out?
The bolt was about I think the frame rail was maybe 4 inches. The bolt was about 3.5 inches, and the plug was up maybe a half inch. So it's a half-inch bolt, and you tighten it, and it would just so that it was inside the tube for the jack post, and it would bottom out against the end of the threads, and it would be tight. But you could loosen it just before the race, and the driver would just reach to his left side, put his fingers on the bolt.
He could turn it
3 turns.
Yes.
And
so the driver controlled it.
Yes, sir.
And then that would drop would open up the plug.
The plug would fall out on the pace lap, and the buckshot.
Oh, wow.
The buckshot didn't melt. It just rolled.
I thought there was something. The plug would melt. I thought there was something in the jack post that would just melt away and allow the buckshot to leave.
That's how all the stories change over time.
Right. Well, I made that up in my head probably.
So we were at Bristol. After doing it, maybe, I don't know if it was, I think it was the night, it was the night race at Bristol, so it was August. We had only started doing that on the short tracks when we ran Bertha. And that car, apparently Darrell turned it, a half a turn less than he should have. So the buckshot didn't come out until our first pit stop. On pit road, when they let the jack down during the first pit stop, then the plug came out and the buckshot started pouring out
there on pit road.
On pit road, and our guys were just panicking, but you can't see it because it's the color of the asphalt, and so our guys were panicking to sweep it up, and I said, Stop, guys! You're sweeping up a dry pit road. Just one guy go with a broom, but unfortunately the trail went through Junior Johnson's pit, who was the next. And so somebody on that team turned us in. Well, they said it was.
So it was. You eventually got discovered.
Well, they didn't. All they said was we saw buckshot coming out of the car when it went through the pits, and so somehow Dave Marcus got his story somehow he got put into the story. But he had nothing to do with it, and so we have scanners, listening to the officials, and the official says, hey, we got a report that 88 car is dropping buckshot, which we finally found the guy doing it. When this race is over, get officials all the way around the car, circle him, don't let anybody touch the car. We're going to find out if he's the one doing it, because there was stories about finding buckshot around the different tracks. And we knew our days were numbered on it anyway. Yeah. And so I was the car chief at the time, and the official's name was Chip Warren. He walked up to me and he said, all the people were back, got Darrell out of the car, got him away from it, and the officials said, all right, Gary, jack up this car, because I want to get under there and I'm going to find out where this buckshot's coming from. And I thought for sure we were caught. We were going to be in a lot of trouble. And when he said jack it up, I put the jack right under the place where the buckshot was coming from, jacked it up, and slipped some jack stands under there, but left the jack there. And he crawled all around under the car, couldn't find it. And he came away from it and said, it must not be them.
Wow.
And that's the actual
Stop
story.
Doing it.
Yeah. That was the last time we ever did it. And that is the story, 100%.
So Bobby becomes the driver in 1982. And you'd win the Daytona 500.
That was my first race as a crew chief.
Ever.
Well, I was in first Cup race as a crew chief.
When you look at your car and you look at the competition, y'all were ahead of the game in terms of aerodynamics. Yes. You look at the right side of that car, it is completely flat.
Yep.
There's no wheel, there's no bubbles.
That was the best body ever.
Yeah. And all the competition, they've got their damn quarter panels beat out and trying to clear tires and all that stuff. And y'all have that damn thing flat as a board.
I'll tell you how we did it.
Yeah.
So we're testing always happened in January in Daytona. It wasn't a big deal like it is now.
Yeah.
You would just privately rent the track. You go run a couple days, come home, and a couple other teams might be there, maybe not. You'd share the expenses. Now it's like everybody wants to
Sure.
go. But in those days, most of the teams couldn't afford it or couldn't get ready, whatever it was. So I didn't like those big fenders, clearing the tires. The way to do body work in those days was you put the rear end housing on a jack in the center, put the tires on it, and you would move it under the body and make sure it didn't touch any of the body work.
Yeah. And
I didn't think that was the right way. And so I went to the hardware store and bought this spray. It's called Great Stuff. It's like a spray foam.
Yeah.
And I sprayed the inside of all the fenders, of all 4 fenders. And we tested, and all it did was the tire it didn't do any damage. Just
rub the foam away
to the exact spot where the tire was running while the car was on the track.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't have to sit in a shop and try to figure it out because you would always want to give it a little extra so you didn't burn the tire against the fender. So I had the exact location of where those all 4 tires were based on rubbing against that foam. And I just thought of it when we were down there one day.
Damn.
I said, looking at these fenders, I said, why can't we push them in? Well, they'll rub. And I said, well, let's find out. So we did that, came back to the shop, and we made templates from the frame to the foam.
Yep.
Exact
where
shape.
it had rubbed.
Took off the body and then put a new body on right up against the templates. And that's how you saw that car so
holy
flat.
Yeah, because it looks different. It looks better or just completely different than the other cars.
It was probably 7/8 of a car compared to the other one.
Yes, and it does look smaller.
And we did a few other things.
Right. I know back in the day they did actually, I know Daryl, there's a car of Daryl's that Junior Johnson built. This might be a couple, 84, 85.
Yeah.
That's narrow. They narrowed the entire car because there wasn't an overall template width-wise. You just ran one across the hood down the back, down the top of the car, like the spine of the car.
Right.
But
I think we started that with that car.
Yeah, that car was a little
in
bit.
82. Yeah, we went to Daytona. You're going to ask me about the bumper next. Yeah. To back up, we had this beautiful car.
Yeah.
I was really proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Robert did the paint, but he didn't do the metal work. Another guy did the metal work. But it was beautiful. We get to Daytona, and soon as we arrive, they asked me, we didn't have cell phones in those days or anything. They asked me to step into the office, the NASCAR office. Said, it's my first time. I've never been a crew chief. I've always been I always had a crew chief. So they said my mother had passed away that night, the night before. And I'd driven down not knowing, get there to sign in. She lived in California, so I said, I'm sorry, guys, but I got to go. And I flew to California. That may have been on a Tuesday or Wednesday or something. And we had the funeral, I think, on Friday. And on Saturday, I believe, I flew back to Daytona, and we ran the Busch Clash, which was really my first race as a crew chief. I think we won it, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think we did win it.
Is this your Daytona 500 car?
Yeah, same car.
Yep.
And while I was gone, the guys took it through inspection, and Joe Gazaway, the inspector, he saw that the car looked so good. This is what one of the things your grandfather always had against NASCAR was if you bring too good a looking car, they're going to find something. And so they wanted the crew to lower the bumper on the rear bumper.
Had you raised it?
Probably.
Yeah.
But it looked right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no measurement or template or anything.
They just looked at it and went, I want you to put that down a little bit.
Yeah, and so the crew did that, and I get back off the plane, and I say, how's there, we had this problem in inspection. They made us move the bumper. We moved it. And
that was that.
I looked, and I said, you guys did an okay job. I didn't crawl under and look at how they did it. It turns out they just put pop rivets on it, riveted it back to the bodywork and dropped it down an inch or whatever.
Yeah.
Satisfied the officials, and I had no idea that they didn't weld brackets on it.
Yeah.
They just riveted it to the sheet
Sure.
metal. And so we go on win the Busch Clash, and then the 125s. I think I don't remember that well. I think we were second or third or something. And then when the 500 started, we just took off.
Yeah.
And I think the race is 200 laps, and I think we led 160 of them.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Yeah.
And during the race, Bobby was passing Cale for the lead on the inside, and Cale bumped the back quarter panel, and the bumper fell off.
Yep.
It was not intentional. It was
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
that bumper comes off, and Joe
crew
Milliken
chief.
ran over it, blew
And then-
right rear tire, and hit the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the crew chiefs, Cale's crew chief at the time,
Yep.
saw what we were doing, and they interviewed him, and he said, yeah, they meant for that bumper to come off. That was his conspiracy theory,
and
I never have been able to
That kicked,
to get that true
that
story
kicked
out.
the ball down the hill.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
and-
appreciate you having me on here for
Yeah.
that one story, because it's been so changed over the years.
I wouldn't think that you would intentionally
I
plan
would've-
for the bumper to come flying off the car because
if
of
I
how
was there, I would have welded the bumper
yes,
off.
because of how dangerous that situation
Yes,
would be.
definitely.
You wouldn't do. You're not that. You're not that type of person.
I have more compassion
Yes.
for my friends.
For sure. And so unfortunate, but at the same time, I mean, that knowing now what I know about bumpers coming off race cars, it certainly didn't hurt things. And I mean, it was a fast race car either way.
We were taking a lead when that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
So.